I am Jim Collison, and this is the Clifton Strengths Podcast, Season 2, recorded on March 15th, 2023. In this Clifton Strengths podcast series, we look at the Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, one theme at a time. And today's theme is consistency. If you're listening live, love to have you join us in chat. There's a link to right above me there if you're not there. And if you're listening after the fact and you have questions, you can always send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Dr. Jaclynn Robinson is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant. And join me for season 1 of the Clifton Strengths podcast, where we looked at the book Well-Being at Work, one theme at a time. And Jaclynn, always great to see you. Welcome back.
Hi. Thank you.
Good to have you today. We are talking about consistency. Let's start off with that definition, and then I'll have an extra question for you.
You bet. So, if you have consistency high, you are keenly aware of the need to treat people the same. You crave stable routines and clear rules and procedures that everyone can follow.
I think sometimes as we look at what you just said, right? We focus on, and we used to call this theme fairness in
Hmm.
early days. And I really see two things here in this definition. One is the way we treat people the same, as
Hmm.
opposed maybe to individualization, where everybody gets a unique look at it. Also, the second part, I think you said, like, craves stable routines and clear rules. Those seem to me maybe treating people the same and doing things the same, maybe a little bit different. Can you clarify that just a little bit more for me as we think about those two ideas together?
Yes. So the routine and the stability and predictability of the day to day helps everyone know what rules to follow, so
Mm,
everyone can feel like they're treated the same. And
mm,
I think that's that piece that we sometimes leave off when thinking about consistency, because we hear it and go, "Ooh, that sounds a lot like discipline." They like predictability and structure.
yeah.
But the motivation behind it isn't to just make their world predictable. It's because that creates rules
Mm,
everyone is, aware of.
yeah.
And when they have that predictable routine, they all know what to expect. No one's caught off guard, so everyone feels like they're treated fair and equal.
Thanks for saying that. That has been this has been one theme. I've been doing this for years now, and this has been one theme I always struggle with it a little bit. And I
Hmm.
guess that maybe I say that to say we're never done understanding these. We're never done like, oh, I got this.
That's true.
7, 8
So
years
true.
into this, 6 years of Theme Thursday, 2 seasons here, so we're at 8, and I'm still struggling with a little bit. So I love that because
Hmm.
it what from here on out, I will think of the me to we, and I think the maturity of this is creating stable routines so that we can treat people fairly, right? We can
Yes.
treat people consistently in that using the small c, man. I don't know. So
Yes.
thanks.
I'm
Yeah,
glad you called it out. I'm so
yeah.
glad that you
Would you add
you
anything
asked to
else?
sort through those.
Would you add
No,
anything
but
else
I
to that?
think as we continue to work through today, just talking about consistency and you hear stability or little c consistency show up or predictability, it is with that motivational
Yeah.
piece of, because that's going to help people know exactly what's expected so everyone feels like they're treated
No, I love that.
fairly.
It
Yeah.
gives me a new way to think about it, and the definition today rewrites that a little bit for me, and it's low.
Mhm.
It's super low for me, so 33, I think, is where it lands. So I don't think about it often, but it teaches me a little bit more about that of like, okay, I can now see the me to we and why the consistent routines are important. That leads to more consistent the way we treat people or creating stable environments for those. I think we'll highlight that a little bit
Yes.
lower down. So we're spending this season thinking about this new role-based report, Clifton Strengths for Leaders. And
Mhm.
we're thinking about it in the context of that. And of course, I think consistency has leadership written all over it, much like individualization does, because it's the way we treat people in that. So
Yeah.
what's the power? What do you think? What's the power of this theme in a leadership role then?
I think you really see the four needs show up.
Mhm.
They bring stability to the organization through the norms and the rules they create to bring fairness to everyone. And individuals know what to expect with this leader. So that level of consistency, little c, and predictability breeds a lot of trust.
How do we reconcile that a little bit in your experience with individualization? And because we know people need
Yeah.
both. right? They
Yeah.
need both. And so as you've worked with the leaders with high consistency, and we think about that question because we need consistent procedures, but people need to be treated
Mhm.
oftentimes, or at least thought about individually, right?
Yes.
How would you reconcile those two?
I love seeing those 2 paired up together, where
Yeah.
they're partnering together in a workplace, because then you've got these rules, these norms, these social mores that people need to abide by for fairness, but individualization makes sure that that person is on the right seat. They're
Yeah.
in the right role, their talents and strengths are being exercised and cultivated, and people with consistency can do that too, and that might come through another theme, but I think they can work so fluidly together because consistency can create that foundation of this is what we all need to abide by, and individualization could say, okay, now let's find,
Mm,
they're kind of the columns that say, okay, now let's figure out where you sit and where we can really play to
yeah.
your own unique talents and strengths.
Yeah. I love that because it's not either or, it's both and. They have to
Yes.
exist together. In leadership, they have to exist together. They can't be separated. It can't be
Yeah,
one or the other. They have to coexist, right?
they do.
Yeah, they have to coexist together, and they can. I think
Yes.
this is the maturity model in this is realizing if I have high consistency, that those individualization components have to exist. How do we get there? And then vice versa, right? We
Hmm.
probably alluded to this a little bit when we talked about individualization as well. And how does that consistency? I have high individualization, high relator, high developer. I want to
Hmm.
create custom programs for everybody. As I've matured in my leadership, I've learned I have to do that in a consistent way, right? I
Yes.
have to find those individual plans in a way. Let's talk some more about how this theme can lead others.
Hmm. Well, in organizations, change is expected and it's often overcome.
Mhm.
Leaders and employees can rely on this leader to remain cool, calm, and collect. And because this person's going to be working to establish a new structure in the workplace that creates stability, fairness, and predictability once again. And so they can look to them a lot like someone even with adaptability and go, "Ooh, okay, looks like they've got this." Adaptability is comfortable reacting to change, being in the moment, but consistency is one of those things that can really just say, okay, no, we're going to get through this. Let's just figure out a new structure we can put in place and,
Yeah,
you know, let's
yeah.
let's get this machine running again.
I love this idea that we're thinking through of how this consistency big C can lead to
Mhm.
processes that really generate stability and really generate um, high production environments. Like predictable environments can be high
Yeah.
producing environments, right? Because we know here's
Yes.
what we're doing, here's how we respond to it. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. This is
Yes.
we do this consistently this way. So do it. Let's not spend a lot of time thinking about it, right? Anything else that you'd add
That's a
to
good
that
one.
as we think about creating those stable environments?
Well, to your point, if the workplace is predictable in terms of the way that people might um, produce products or services or results, then quality
Yeah.
amplifies too because everyone's in alignment of what quality looks like because everyone's in alignment of what it takes to, you know, abide by
Yeah.
norms or
Yeah.
rules. So, okay, this is excellence in terms of relationship building within the workplace, or maybe there's certain rules and standards for how you create a product or service. And okay, now we're producing excellence in terms of the quality work we're delivering because we're all on the same page of the steps it takes to get there. So I think to your point, I'd add on it can increase productivity because people know it's expected, but also quality because people are aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think also, with a greater emphasis and movement as we have talked about DEI in
Hmm.
the workplace and bringing that to light. We still have a lot of work to do there, but bringing those with this high talent of really bringing that. I mean, it comes at a passion. It comes
Hmm.
at a with a purpose. And we need to continue to push on that. We need to continue to work towards it. It's not over. We have a lifetime of things to do to continue to make that work. And
Yeah.
so we all need to be thinking about that. I think high consistency can use that talent for good in this and really make sure that we're thinking through all those issues. What about
Mhm.
hinder? As we think about how this might hinder in leadership, what do you see there?
Some people in the workplace can feel really restricted by a set number of rules or guidelines or boundaries that they're expected to work or play within. So, for folks that want to ideate or break through status quo to create change for employees or customers, this level of structure could create friction and restlessness.
Mm.
So, that's just something that someone with consistency would want to keep their eye on.
Yeah, the report contains both of these.
Hmm.
A look at helps and hinders, and we have a whole list of action items for you on this. If you haven't checked out the Clifton Strengths for Leaders report, probably now is the time to do that. Great opportunity for you to dig into it. We've been thinking about the four needs, right? As we
Yes.
think about working with others. You alluded to this earlier, but let me ask you the question again. As we think about this fitting into hope, stability, compassion, and trust,
Hmm.
where do you think that fits in? What does it provide in that framework?
Trust and stability with
Mhm.
the predictability they create within the workplace so everyone feels like they're treated fairly. And I think that can lend itself to compassion. Okay, everyone's
Mm,
getting a one-on-one conversation. Everyone's having a developmental conversation.
yeah.
This person really cares about us to make sure that everybody's getting it. So even going back to DE and I, no one's left um, unseen or unheard because there's a certain there's a certain method, there's
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
expectations. Yeah.
Unrepresented. I would add another, to that, they're being represented
Yeah.
as part of the conversation. Um, I had another question I
Mhm.
was going to ask you on that, and then that I got overwhelmed. I got overwhelmed a little. Oh, yeah. Thinking of that compassion, I love that was going to be. I was going to bring that as I think this really brings by creating stability. You're actually being
Mhm.
and in fairness, you're actually being compassionate to people, right? It's
Yes.
giving them.
Yes.
It's this idea of compassion. I think. I think
Meeting
sometimes.
everyone's needs.
Yeah. 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 We spending some time this season thinking about this in the context of mixing it or combining it or report dynamicing it together with no, it's not a no, it's
That's
not a
been
word,
so
but
fun. I think
you
that's the highlight of this
yeah, you kind of rocked my world a little bit.
report
My brain
dynamic.
is spinning here on this, so I may struggle talking for the rest of this. But as we think about this in the context of the Clifton Strengths for Sales report that we have, combining it with this leader report, what do you see there?
I say this every time, but this is so fun to think about the leadership report and the sales
Mhm,
report together
mhm,
and to think about what would this person look like. So this leader might establish some set guidelines that they encourage or ask each sales rep to walk through in their sales cycle in order to create a seamless, efficient, and fair experience for every prospect or client. So, for example, each sales rep might be expected to have a pitch that includes why buy anything? Why buy from you? Why buy now?
yeah.
You know, make sure that you're getting those why questions in. And, we always say never start a question with why, but if we're going back to sales, the five whys or the three whys, you hear that often. So they might have that type of process. So this was a fun one for me to think about.
Yeah, equal access in
Yeah.
like, our is our product designed or set up in a way, are we selling it in a way where it has equal access to the community, to those
Yes.
around, so they can actually participate in this, right? They can actually
That's a
do
good one.
what we're doing, right? I think bringing that era of consistency in thinking through that from a sales perspective. I think
Hmm.
creating products is one thing. Selling them is completely different, right?
Yes.
And those, so combining those two together of thinking about both the creation of the product and then the market that it meets, and then do people have fair access to it, or do they have consistent access to it, or they have equal access to it? We can throw all those in there, thinking about it from that perspective. What about the leader and the manager as we put those two together? What do you see there with those reports?
As a manager, employees probably know that this individual is going to hold them to the same expectations and standards. So,
Mm,
in this regard, employees probably find their manager to be really fair and consistent in their management style. everyone's going to get that one-on-one every quarter. Everyone needs to abide by the same rules. Everyone has performance metrics to hit, and so forth.
Really great place to work or a person to work for. Like I create, even though I am
Yeah.
all adaptability, I am all ideation, I am all individualization, I crave a manager who has the consistency bit down, right? And
Hmm.
if you're a leader and you don't have it, you've got to borrow it or find it or work on some processes that make it work. Partner,
True.
right? Kind of partner with it. Doesn't mean because not, yeah, it doesn't mean you can, well, sorry, that's just the way I roll. Well, you have
Hmm.
to maybe roll a little different in some of these. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
Um, I like what you said. You've got to borrow it or find somebody that has it. I think that actually even gets me thinking of, as we start to wrap up consistency, ways that they
Yeah.
can continue to lean into this, or partners can. Just based on what you just said, it gave me quite an insight, but I want to tuck it away for for when I know that you're ready to wrap. Then I'll
Yeah.
I'll bring
Yeah.
out that
Yeah. Yeah.
nugget.
One of the things, yeah, I'll ask you. So get ready. I'll ask you here in just a minute. But one of the things I think is you mentioned this about taking these role-based reports and really, I'm serious about putting them side by side and spending
Yes.
time with those that you're coaching or yourself to read these helps and hinder statements and start to build through the lens of the action planning that's in them. In my role, I'm going to. So you could almost, we got
Hmm.
this idea of an individual development plan. It's available in our kits. If you don't have it, it's an easy concept, right? I generally have folks read through the insight statement report and then transfer those through the lens of a goal and push that downstream. What are some action items I'm going to do? I think taking these two reports, whether it's sales and or manager and leader or any combination of them, you can do whatever you want, right, with it. But thinking through then, how do I push these through the lens of my leadership? And what are
Hmm.
some helps and hinders in them? And then what are some goals that I have and what am I going to do differently as a leader? And God, that just seems like a really great way to do that dynamically. And I get excited when I see you get excited about putting these two together. And I think like, yeah, we could do more of that. We absolutely
That
could do.
it's so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
It really it really gets your creative juices flowing of how you
Yeah.
could see those show up in somebody.
I think so. Okay. Wrap consistency for us.
Smart idea with having people combine
Yeah.
reports and look. Homework for you all. um, so what your comment actually made me think about was, we'll ask questions in the workplace around engagement about fairness, equality, DE&I, and a lot of times you'll hear employees talk about fair. And what they really mean is, I saw this person get a coaching session and I didn't. I saw this person have a developmental conversation and I didn't. Typically, when you have an employee talking about fair, what they mean is they want that equal opportunity where they're all getting some of those standards and policies within the workplace fair. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants that consistency. And then within that actual conversation with their manager, they can individualize based on their talents and strengths. Or,
Mhm.
all of you on the team are seeking this promotion, but this is what it takes to get there. So now here's the individualization part too. Let's see where you're at. Do your skills currently align? Does your experience currently align? Have you hit the performance metrics necessary? So when you hear oftentimes an employee talk about this is fair or that's not fair, it typically goes back to that consistency mindset of, is this predictable? Is this standardized? Where everyone's having an equal opportunity to have that type of discussion or to have performance metrics, etc. So that's actually what you drove me to. So if you don't
Nice.
have that, who is that partner that has consistency high or is really consistent and great at standardizing so everyone feels like they're treated fairly
Yeah.
with workplace standards or policies or conversations,
Love it.
etc.
Love it.
Yeah.
By the way, this is a really hard thing to do. Like, I think
Mhm.
sometimes we think, well, I'll just set some rules. Nah,
Yeah.
nah, you got it. The same thing on the individualization side. It's hard to do. Like, this is what makes great leaders great, I think, in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, is they're able those with these high talent that have really honed it over time and exercised it in a way. It's just hard to do. And so don't just setting standards think, well, you just set the standards. Well, it doesn't, it's really not. Doesn't really
Yep.
work that way. And I think we all know that, but I think it's much harder. We need each other more on this, maybe than ever, right?
Yes. I was
Yeah.
just going to say, I think you just highlighted and stamped the need to have individualization and consistency
Yeah.
in the workplace. When I've
Okay.
seen them together too, it's happened to be with HR professionals where they have both in their top 10.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
We,
Yeah.
we, we need each other. I think it's a good way to wrap it. With that, we'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we do have available in Gallup Access. Head out to gallup.com/CliftonStrengths and log in there. More resources coming there all the time. And so if you haven't been out there in a while, check in. Head out to the resources tab, menu upper left, drop it down, choose resources, and then search for consistency, and everything we've done on it is posted there. Lots of resources, literally hours of resources for you to get caught up on. Stay up to date with all the webcasts by following us on Eventbrite. Go to gallup.eventbrite.com. Create an account, follow us there. You'll get an email whenever we post anything new, like this session, if you wanted to join us live. And then, of course, join us on any social platform by searching Clifton Strengths, and we're everywhere. We are everywhere. So check it out. And we want to thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, share all those other things that you need to do for social proof. We'd love it that you would. Thanks for listening today. If you are listening live, stay around for a little bit of a mid show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.